Hey guys, today we're going to do a music demonstration in coding, which is sonicpi. It is running on Ruby, and we're going to make a full arranged song, not a like complete song, but just like a demonstration that how coding can be integrated into music with kind of bass dubstep vibe. So we're going to start. So this is like the initial debugging ability in the code. Um, the thing is, it runs on your CPU, and you should decrease as much as possible the CPU load. So the audio output would be better, and you would have more CPU overload for the music. And then, as I said, we're going to use like dubstep bass vibe. So we set the BPM to 140. And then we should initialize the master settings as this. We define master. This is like the overall uh, master loudness. You can like change this. And if it clips, you should lower that. And you also define another variable, which is high quality with the initial value of 1. You can change this to 0. So like, for example, when we're going to control the FX, uh, if it's 1 is better, and if it's not 1, which is 0, um, it's just like normal sound. And if your CPU overloads, you should like use high quality 0. And then we're going to set the mixer control. So as you see, um, this like amplitude is for the overall amplitude, the global one, which is the output gain. And we have another variable, which is preamp. Oh, actually, it's underlined. It's preamp set to 1 is default. And this is like the master controls. And after that, we're going to uh, tune the music and the scaling. So after this, we're going to define the whole root of the song, which in this example is you can set it to E2. And after that, um, so it's like note E in octave 2, which will be used in bass, lead, and everything. And also, we should define scales here. We can define the scales like this. C notes, scale. So we define it here. So the root, which we just defined, and uh, we can literally define anything, but I'm going to define minor. Yeah, it has it. Pentatonic here, and So this is the root, and this is the E minor pentatonic, and it should be over 2 octaves. So we define the number of octaves uh, as 2. And so it basically just defines a list, the SC notes list that has the E minor pentatonic on 2 octaves, and it's kind of making it as a MIDI notes, like the MIDI notes you used in your DAWs. And yeah, so we'll leave it here. So after this, we're going to define some sounds. Um, and first, I define the hat, the tight hat. So we define the tight hat function like this. And so we should define the time of that. So there's like global variable t, which is the time that is steady throughout all the music. So we can define the t variable for each of this, and maybe even we can like multiply it by some values. So here we want it to be um, short in terms of duration. So we define it like t quarter, and we can like define the amplitude of every element of the music like this. So we define the amplitude like here as 0.9. And yeah, so after this, we should also use our sample. So this is the function with this variable values, and we should define then what exact sample it should be used. So sample here would be um, drum cymbal close with the amplitude that we just defined as A, and sustain of 0 uh, as it's like a hat, so it shouldn't be long. And so the release should be like longer in comparison to like uh, punchy sounds. We don't want it here. So define it at t multiplied by 0.7. And so it's basically how we define functions, and then we uh, end it with end. So the sample here is drum cymbal close, and the amplitude and sustain and release. So the sustain 0 makes it a short transient, and the release defines how quickly it fades, which is then scaled by t. As I said, it's the global variable of time. Okay, so we should also define another sound. So we also define snare hit. Uh, so we just define the amplitude here, which is 1.2, and we use sample S and dub with amplitude of A and sample S and zone amplitude of A multiplied by like 0.05 with rate of 1.2. And again, we end it here. So what we have done here is that we have two snares here. One is main snare body, which is like dubby one, and we add another layer of snare, which is an additional texture, which we add for extra brightness. And as you see, like the amplitude of the second snare is like much lower. So the main focus would be on the first snare. And we define the rate as this. So it pitches it slightly for the like extra snap. Okay, so after this snare one, we also should define our kick. So we define the kick hit. And like the snare, we just define the amplitude, which will be 0.6. Oh, sorry. Should make it louder. So the kick is louder in comparison to other parts, and then the snare, and then the like hats and everything. So yeah, we define the amplitude of kick here, and we also should identify the sample. We can use this one and the amplitude A just defined. And we end it here. So this kick is kind of a house kick, and the amplitude of 1.3. And yeah, that's it. So after this, you have another sound here, which is you should define also a percussion. So we define the perk tick as we just define the amplitude, which is 0.6. Yeah, so it should be much quieter than the kick. And we also use sample here, which is electric. The amplitude of A and rate of 1.2. Yeah, so this rate makes it slightly faster, and it's kind of a ear candy percussive kit. Okay, so after defining these sounds, we can also define a riser. So that would be defined like this. Define as riser. Okay, so you should define the length of it in terms of bars. So it would be 8 and has the amplitude of 1/8. Use high pass filter here and cut off 70. He use also another FX, which is slicer. Slicer with phase of 0.25, 0.35. I will explain those, right? So we add amplitude, sustain as mean beats, and release of 0.1, and um, 9 beats multiplied by 4 times 2, and we define C as this. And we also add some control on this, chart age and cutoff. And we define sleep here. And all of them. Okay, so basically this is a riser and the length is 8. The amplitude of the whole riser is 0.8. And the first FX we're using on this is high pass filter uh, that starts as at cutoff 70. So the H thing is here is a handle for the FX. So when we're going to automate this H handle corresponds to the cutoff, and it's useful in automation. And the second one is second FX is slicer. We're going to add some rhythmic gating on that, like sidechain chop. So the phase is a quarter, which means that it chops at quarter beat intervals, and the low mix here is to make it subtle. And we define a variable as n here, which is um, synthesizer. So this is the main noise in the riser. And amplitude of A, we just define as 0.8, and sustain as length beats, and release of 0.1. So the length beats makes it a full riser, and so the n variable here stores the synth node ID, and we can use that to turn it down at the end. And other things here is that uh, the thing here, okay, this may sound confusing. So this actually loops in quarter bit steps across the whole riser uh, because len length beats ticks as the beats. So by this, we can calculate the C as an increasing cutoff based on this ticking. So when you calculate this, it means that it starts at 70 and it ends at 130. So uh, this whole thing here, that would be 1. And so actually this I point to F produces a smooth 1 to 0 ramp together with length beats multiplied by 4. Okay, so then we define the controlling of the edge handle I just talked about in here. Okay, so we automate the high pass filter here upward, which means that it kind of opens up over time. And sleep, like whenever I use sleep, is like kind of delay based on the beat time. So the BPM that we define as 140. So this is like based on the global BPM. And we end the automation loop here. After that, we have this line that this turns down the noise sense node immediately. So it wouldn't be like um, interfering afterwards. And then we end slicer FX block and high pass filter FX block. And at the end, we end the noise riser itself. Okay, so after this, we going to define a zapfx kind of short synth stabs as this one. So I write define zapfx. We add the fx of distortion and distort of 1.35 with a mix of um, do and We're going to use ascend FM note scale. This would be E3 minor pentatonic. Choose depth of 2, divisor of 2. Should we make this next line? Minor pentatonic doesn't have the double quotation. And a sustain of 0.05 and release of 0.2 and amplitude of 8. Then we end this and end this. So we define a short zap effect with amplitude of 0.9 here, and we use FX distortion. So the distort value, which is the drive here, is a moderate drive, and we use mixing of 0.6 to blend of clean alongside distorted. And then for this line, the whole thing here. Okay, so this uses FM synth for metallic-like zap character, and this way of defining this, it makes it choose a random note from E minor pentatonic around E3, and depth and divisor shape FM brightness. Then the sustain of 0.05 makes it short, and release of 0.2 makes it punchy. So it's tiny sustain, short release. And then we end the distortion, and then we end the zap fix. Okay, so these were the visor and the zap effect. And we also defined our kick drums. And then we can define the wop bass here. So we can define it as define wop bass. Okay, so we use length 0.5 and amplitude of 1 and wop phase of quarter. And we use FX here. cutoff of 85, resonance of 0.85. We add another effects, which can be after low pass filter is wobble, phase of wobble, phase, wave of 1, and mix of 85. Invert mix of invert wave of 0, two, and we also add another affix, which is the distortion. It's distorted on, for example, 0.55 mix of 0.75, and we're done with the affixes. Then we use send with so and note n with detune of 0.08 and sustain of len 0.9, release, then 0.2, and with amplitude of A and off of 9.95. No, it's 95, sorry. Then we end all of them. So here we define the wall base, and the n is a note. The length is duration in beats, and this is the amplitude, and the wobble phase of which is the wobble speed. So the lower the phase, the faster the wobble. And we use low pass filter as the first suffix here with cutoff 85 and resonance of 0.85. So the low pass filter here is used to keep the bass taken controlled, and the resonance of 0.85 makes it that additional byte, and the cutoff of 85 for the filter makes it dark. Okay, then the next effect is the wobble. So this adds the wobble, which is the rhythmic filter movement, and we use the wobble phase here, which is the wobble rate, we use wave here that selects the waveform shape for the wobble modulation and mix of 0.85. It should be mostly affected, so it will be the strong movement. And the next fix is distortion, which creates the heavy distortion for aggressive dubstep tone, and it's high distort as the mix is high. So this is like 75. And we also have the synth here. So it uses detuned dual saw for wide and growly sound. We define detune as 0.08, which makes it wider and more aggressive. And so sustain and release scale uh, with scale with length variable. So short hits stay tight. And we define the amplitude as default. And so that it controls the loudness per hit and the cutoff here, which sets synth brightness uh, here, but this is after the filtering of low pass filter. So it's filtered first and then is the additional cutoff here. And then we end distortion and wobble and low pass filter and wobble phase. And after this, we should define the sub bass. Yeah, so define the sub bass here as sub bass to notes n length of 1 and 9 and 9th amplitude. So it's strong in amplitude, but not overly strong. So we use sine with note n and sustain with the length variable itself multiplied by 95 and release of len 0.15 and amplitude of a integer. So we define a clean sublayer using a sine wave, and the sine wave plays at note n. And okay, so sustain is most of the length, and short releases avoid clicks. And this is essential for avoiding clicks. And we end the sub bass here. Okay, so we actually defined the sounds to this point. Um, if we wanted to just play it and playing around the loops here, we shouldn't have used define functions, and we could just use loops, live loops. But the thing is, I wanted to arrange the song itself on the code. Uh, you can basically do live loops and just playing around them and play record and do the recordings. But the point of this video was to show you that alongside defining the sounds, we can also defining the arrangement in the code. So I want the arrangement be around 3 minutes standard. And so after this, we're going to use the live loops only for the arrangement because the sounds are defined and we can just do the arrangement. So diving into the arrangement after defining these ones. Okay, so here we start is live loop. So basically the live loops is the basic thing for playing the sounds in sonicpi, and conductor do bar I equals tick, and we set the bar I bar I. So the master timing loop, this is the master timing loop that defines the bar index and section for all other loops. And um, the tick here increments an internal counter each time this loop runs. So since the loop sleeps 4 bits later, bar underline I actually becomes the bar number. So it's like 0, 1, 2. And after this, uh, we set them as bar I. So this stores the bar number in the global time state so other loops can get the bar I. So it's kind of globalizing it. And after this, we find stick and we define as we use a lot of ifs here. So let me write it first. Bar I less than 12. So we copy paste this thing and we paste it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 additional times. So this is 20, this is 36. This is 44, this is 52, this is 76, this is 92, and this is 100. So this is build 1, this is drop 1, and this is break. This is build 2, this is drop 2, and this is outro, and this is final break. So then we have else, end tag, end. And we also have section here. So it's set section, sec, use bar, and we have another if bar I greater equal 105, and then we have stop, and end. And we have a delay here of 4, and end. So let me explain this to you. As I said, this is the main live loop, and I explain this part, then we're going for the sec. So this sec starts building a variable, and this variable will store the section symbol. And so we kind of are naming the arrangement here. So for example, this one here says if you're in bar 0 to 11, so the 12 doesn't count. This is intro, and this naming is useful because like when you run the program, you can see the cues here. So in the cues, you'd see the names, so you would know that in each section and length of the music, it shows, for example, this cue, you would know that, okay, this is now in drop one, and drop one loop is running at the moment. And then we have build up one, drop one. We have break, build up two, drop two, outro, and final break, and end tag. As I said, these are just cues for you to know and also for the program to know. So after this, the final break is the final commerce section, and we actually wanted to end on bar 100, and we end the tag section here, and this one we store the current section globally so every other loop can read it. So basically, as I said, for you to know the cues and for the global program to know. And we have cue as bar. So this sends a synchronization cue with the name of bar. So all other loops that can be synchronized to the same bar actually value to line up perfectly at bar boundaries. And then we have this one that it defines the final stop on bar 105. So if you assume the 140 BPM, then each beat would be around 60 seconds, and it would be if you calculate, I mean, I wanted it to be 3 minutes. So if you like calculate this, um, 3 minutes is 180 seconds, which is equal to 420 bits with the BPM of 140. So because of that, I defined this bar here. Okay, then this delay here waits on bar, um, like 1 bar, which is like equal to 4 bits before the next tick happens, which keeps the bar I aligned to bars. And then we end the conductor loop. Okay, this is the main arrangement. After this, we're going to doing the drums. So this is like a lot, but yeah, we can do that. So we define another live loop. We call it drum main. But this is the sync bar I talked about, that it's synchronized to the cue of we just defined. And sec of it gets the section. And the bar I is the same bar I before. And then we use fx of compressor here with threshold of 0.2 and ramp time of 0.01 and relaxation time of 0.12 with the mix of 1.8. And after that, so we can use sec here when it's in intro, then 16 times to I, kick it on 0.25 if I equal to 0 or I is equal to 10. So then this na here would be 1.05 if I is equal to 8, and the percussion take of 0.35 if, no, we define it brackets, if, let me check the values I just wrote. Yeah, this is correct. So if 6 and 14 include include I. Okay, after that we have the delay, and we have the end. So we have another one. So let me explain this first. So as I said, this live loop is for primary drum pattern loop, and the here, yeah, this phase for cube bar from conductor. So it starts exactly on bar grid. And then we have this one that reads current section, which can tell that it's intro, build, drop, and etc. And this one here, it reads the current bar number, which is used for occasional conditional variation. And then for with FX, it compresses the drum bus to make it a little louder and more consistent. So the threshold says when compression kicks in, and the clamp time uh, is the fast attack. It grabs the transients, and the relaxation time release is the release time, and the mix of point 0.8 is it means that mostly compressed but not fully, and then we have the case. So we want to program the drum patterns here, and we use case here to switch drum programming depending on the section. So for example, this when here is for intro, and for intro, uh, the so the intro runs 16 steps of the quarter beat, which is like 16 multiplied by a quarter, which is equal to 4 beats, which is a bar. So then after this, we define the drum pattern exactly. So for example, this kicks on steps 0 and 10 that creates a sparse halftime-ish groove. And this one is this snare on step 8. So it's beat 3 in halftime, which is a like classic dubstep snare placement. And this percussion here, it has a small takes before and after snare for swing and interest. So then this is the quarter beat delay and ends the 16 step bar. So this was for intro. Then after this, um, we have, I mean, makes it more sense to copy the whole thing. Okay, then for the build build up 1 and build up 2 is the same, so we define both build 1 and build 2, and it's again 16 times. So the difference here is that the kick is the same thing, yeah, but the yeah, let's change this. So the if would be on 0, 4 and 10 include question mark and 5. And the snare here would be a little more, so it's 1.15 if I equals 8, and we also add the type at the initially defined as 0.25 and 0.55. If I, but this is this means that it is even. Yeah, it's the same thing as defining it is even in programming. I mean the even odd, the even in number. And then we have the same percussion tick, but with more of this. So what can we define here? So, okay, so after this, the percussion would be actually 45, and this is different. It's 6, 7, 13, and 15 include I, and with the same sleep delay and end. So for this one, the so the 16 times do I is the same 1 bar duration, and the kick here says that it kicks only on steps. Uh, yeah. Wait a second. Let me fix something here. Yeah. So the kick here is like it has more kicks, which has more energy here, and note that this 16 is halftime, and also the snare here is still on the beat 3, so it's not changed. And the hats that are new here are hitting on even steps, which is every half beat, which adds more drive to the sound. And then for the percussion, here it's kind of creating a little roll feel kind of vibe at the end of phrases. So it's drum roll, and okay, after this, we again copy the whole thing. So it was, oh, I forgot the field 2 one. Okay. So then we define the break and final break together as they are also similar. So this one will be final break, and previous one is the normal break. So again, it's 16 times. Then we define the kick. It's 1.1, and this is different. If I equals to 0, or I equals to 8. So then we have the snare hits of, this is different now, of 0.95 if I equals to 12 here, and the bar I divided by 2, then the remaining would be 0 again. So this means the even thing again, and um, then we define the tight hat again with the same quarter, but this would be 0.45 if again even, and yeah, this is correct. And then we don't have the percussion tick here. Let me delete that. And then we have the same sleep duration here. Okay, so for the break drums, this kick hits only on steps 0 and 8, which is just the simple one. And for the snare, it's the occasional snare on step 12, but only every other bar. The So this is the even alongside the 12. Okay, so this 12 is additional to the even steps. And then we have the hat here that has some light hats for pulse. And yeah, so after this arrangements, we have the arrangements of after breaks we have drops. So we do the arrangement of drops as well. So we just copy paste this. Okay, so then would be drop 1 and drop 2, which are similar. Okay, again 16 times. Then kick is a lot different. Kick hits 1.4 if um yeah, kind of this one. If steps 0, 3, 10, oh this was 0, 3, 10, 12, and 14 include I. Then we have snare hit of 1.3 if I is equal to 8. Okay, then we have tight hat of a quarter, the same, but but here, so the tight hat would be I remaining of division of 2 equal to 0. This is the same, and so we use some samples here, like drum, cymbal, pedal with amplitude of 0.35. No, if um, steps 5 and 13 that include uh, and we also use another sample here, which is elec flip 2 with amplitude of quarter. Oh, sorry, a quarter and rate of 1.5 if on steps 7 and 15, and then that includes question mark I with the sleep of same and the same and okay, then yeah, steps 3, 10, 12, 14, and yeah, that makes sense. So for here, for the drops, so the kick here means that it has a heavy kick pattern that adds a syncopation typical in modern dubstep, and this snare hit is a strong snare on beat 3, and the tight hat, um, this hat, it's every step because tight hat itself is short, so it has an accenting on even steps. And for the samples, this sample itself adds extra foot pedal hit for groove, and this sample here has small high blips for ear candy at the end of the bar. The same sleep duration and the end. So I think yeah, we have the outro left. So we write the arrangement of the outro as well. So for the outro, it's much more simpler. So it's outro. So we have the 16 things again. So we only have kick, 1, 1, 0, F, F, steps 0, and A. Oh, actually, this kick here should be more. So 1.15, F, 0, and 10 steps. Then include the I, K. Then we have again the snare, but different value, which can be 1.05 if I is equal to 8. So then we have the tight hat of quarter 45.45 if I divided by 4 remaining would be 0. So it's like each 4. And then, yeah, this is the intro as I'm writing. I'm just checking if anything is wrong or not. And after the intro, then we just end it for the tag. So, oh, So then would be the end tag, and 16 times do I kick it. This is going to be 1.0 if steps 0 and 8 include snare hit lower, so 0.9. If I is equal to 12 and snare hit of zero point 0.9 gain, if I is same thing, if I is equal to I think the snare hit, yeah, the tight hat is additional here, so just delete that. So the snare hit of 0.9, I told I, yeah, this is 1 and steps 0 and 8, the same situation, and then we end all the ends here, so it would be 3 additional ends. Yeah, so uh, for the outro, which was here, we should have fewer kicks, which we have, and we have the snare still anchors halftime fill, and we have hats that that hits only every 1 bit. So it's, as you can see here, yeah, the hats here. This is this thing here means like steps 0, 4, 8, and 12. So it would be less busy. Then we have the delay, and for the end tag is uh the kick here is very simple final pulse, and the snare here is the final little snare that hit late in bar and the sleep, and we end everything, even the case and drums and the compressor here. Okay, so it's not finished yet. We have just finished the drums. So after the drums, we have some things for hats. So it's just additional groove, but like either way, we add for making it a little more detailed. Oh, okay. So um, I'm thinking that we can do the similar thing for this one, or yeah. So just live loop, live loops. We name it hats layer view with synchronization to bar and sec. It should get the sec section, and have the amplitude h equals to jsec. Then we have the vents here, but it's a lot more easier the previous one. Intro then 0.35. So we have 1, 2, 3, yeah, 3 more wins here. So this is the intro. This would be the build up 1 and build up 2. This will be 0.6. And then similar to this one, yeah, this is better. So we have build up 1 and then we have drop 2, drop 1 and drop 2. So, but this is different and it will be 0.85. And for the outro, so it would be then 0.45. And then we have else 0.4 and we have ending here. Yeah. And then if section is equal to drop 1 or section is equal to drop 2 or section is equal to build up 1 or section of section is equal to build up 2, then we have 32 here instead of 16 as previous. So 32 times do I, and then we define the tight hat here, steps. Tight hat is this one, amplitude h. And this is I, the remaining of division of I to 2 equals to 0. Check that. Oh, this is 1.0 and then we have a sample here that we can add, which is a drum symbol open. It's amp h 12 sustain of 0 and release of point, yeah, 0.8. If I divided by 8 remaining would be 7. It's kind of one left to the last one. Then we have another state duration time, which here is 125, and we end it here. Else, we have 16 times 2, oh, 2 I. Then we have a tight hat here, 0.25 amplitude. Uh, okay, if again it is even, then we have another sleep duration time here, which is a quarter. And then we end it here and here and also here. So basically, as I said, this was the additional hat layer. So the extra hats makes the groove feels more animated, and we have the synchronization as bar as the globalized one. So it locks the bar grid, and this one is reads the section to get to know that which section it is in. And after that, we have this one that compute hat loudness based on section. So we have different loudnesses of hats in different sections of the music. Then we have this one. We define these things as case. And oh, this shouldn't be indented. Okay, yeah. Then this is the section based hat volume mapping. And then we have for intro, we map the volume as quiet. And then we, for builds up one and two, we map the volume louder. For drops, it would be bright and present. And we also decrease it in the out in the outro. And for everything else, we have a default of 0.4, and we end the case of volume mapping. And here is for energetic sections, so the hats would be faster. So like here, um, so it's 32 steps of 1 divided by 8. So it's 1/8 bit. So if you do the calculation, it would be that you multiply 32 by 0.125, which is equal to 4 bits, which is equal to 1 bar. And then for this one, we have the alternating hat accents that even steps louder. And then this sample adds a tiny open hat at the end of each half beat group, which is every 80 steps, like a micro lift. And we have like delay of eighth note, 8th bit. And so for the else one, it means that in calmer sections, we have slower hats. And then we would be the normal 16 times. And it has hat every half bit. So it's even steps only. And we have the traditional sleep duration as others. And then we end the section choice and ends the hat loop. So okay, we can add the pad to our music. So we also add pad. Okay, next we're going for another live loop, which is the pad for ambient. Uh, So for pad, we're going to have another live loop. So we create another live loop and we call it add atmosphere as this, and it's synced with bar, and the section is going to be read on the section. And so here we created, we have add amplitude. So we are going to have like case section. So we define our cases here. So when it's in intro, then it's 0.55. When it's in break, then or final, right, which are similar, then it's the amplitude will be 0.45, and when it is in outro, then the amplitude would be 0.5. Everywhere else in other sections, it would be 0.25, and we end the amplitude modulation. Okay, so then we have uh, the main sound, which is going to be made out of an FX. So what FX we're going to use is usually we have reverb on our pad. So we define the reverb variables as, so this is the high quality thing I told you about. We're going for 1 here because it's important to be better. And 0.7 and 0.5. And we set the mix as also high quality and 35. And do, then we are going to have another FX, which is going to be the low pass filter, low pass filter, and cut off at 95. Then we're going for the send with the name profit. And then we're going to play a chord here. So it will be on E3, and it will be the chord progression of minor 7 with sustain of 3.5 and release of half and amplitude of pattern, which we defined earlier for the modulation. Then we have a lot of delay here, just 4. And then we end all the affixes here, 2, and we have another one. Okay, so basically this live loop is for atmosphere sound. This is the atmosphere layer to fill the space between drum and bass. Then again, we get the synchronization bar from this one, and we got the synchronization of sections from here. And then here we compute the pad loudness based on the section. So we define the cases. So for example, for intro, the pad is more audible, and then it's still present in break, and it's still present in outro with different values. And for drop, uh, yeah. So for drops and build-ups, which are the Ls here, are the pad are quieter, so it doesn't mask the drum or the bass. So then for the FXs, we have reverb, high quality. So the reverb is for spreading the width, and it is heavier in HQ mode. And we have another FX, which is the low pass filter, to make the pad so it stays warm and not harsh. Then we have the synth of Prophet, which sets the synth for lush pad, and then we play the chord here. So it plays E minor 7 chord progression at each bar. So the sustain here is actually the entire bar, which is 3.5 bits plus a short release of half. So like the summation of this half and the 3.5 would be 4, which is a full bar. And so it has a smooth bar to bar overlap. So this kinds of making the overlap, which you can easily do on DAWs. And so basically the sleep is a lot here to make the delay a full bar, and then we're going for endings and ending the pad loop. Okay, so after the pad loop, we're going for transitions. So we create another live loop and call it transitions do, and we again sync it with bar and get the section from the sections. And then bar I would be getting the bars from bar I. Yeah. Then we have an if statement that says if section is drop 1 or the section is drop 2, and if 1 in 3 is in thread do have a delay, so it's brackets. So the delay would be half, 1, 1.5, and 2 dot choose with the that prefix we defined earlier with the value of 0.8. Then we end all over. Yeah. So here, this one, actually, it's not, yeah. This if ends, but still, after this one, yeah. I think I'm wrong with the intents. So this if, let me check that again. Yeah. Yeah, so for transition after these ones, we have this one. Ooh, I missed another if. So we're going to write the if here. Yeah. So we have another if here first, which is that if the section is the build-up one and bar I is at 19, or the section is at build-up 2 and the bar I is equal to 51, then in thread we have noise riser, the value of 8 and 0.9, and we end the if here. Then after this, we're going for the second if, which is for drop 1 and drop 2, 1 and 3 in thread 2 with the sleep, and this, and yeah. So after ending these ifs, then we have the sleep again. So it's then before the final ending. Okay, so this if here triggers a riser on the last bar of each build section, and the init thread thing here runs the noise riser in a separate thread so it can animate internally while the loop continues. So it just kind of separates them. And for this if here, it only sprinkles zaps during drops. And this one here says that 1 in 3 chance per bar is that it would trigger random variation without too many events. And then here, the thread here, it runs zap event asynchronously, and the sleep here, so it's not synchronized, and we have multiple values of delays here. So it's random offset inside the bar. And this one here is it triggers the zap sound, and we end them all here. Then this one here, uh, this is a tiny sleep, so the loop doesn't spin too fast. So it will resync at next bar anyway, because the synchronized is set at bar at the top. And then this is the end for the transition loop. Okay, so uh, we have the sub layer that we're going to use. So we uh, define the live loop for the sub layer as this. And then again, we synchronize with bar and the section, it gets that from the section. Oh, yeah. So then we set a modulation for the amplitude of S, the sub, as again we use case for each section. So it would be that when it is in drop 1 and drop 2, which are similar, then the amplitude would be slightly more. And when it is in build 1 or build 2, then it would be lower, which is 0.75. And when it is an intro, yeah, then it's really low. And because we don't want that in intro, like mostly. And when it is in outro, so it's still low, but higher than intro. So it would be something around like 0.6. Like everywhere else, it can be stuck at 0.45. And we end the case for amplitude modulation here. Okay, so after this, we're going to have some if statement here. So if the section is in drop 1 or the section is at drop 2 or the section is at build of 1 or section is at build of 2, then we define the sub base as E1. So we define the note and the value of 2 and the amplitude modulation of S as it is, as the initial value. And we have delay of 2. And then we have the sub base with the same note as E1 and another value, which is 1, and also another value for the amplitude, which is the amp S multiplied by 0.85. Then it has sleep with 1 value, And then for the next section, it has another note for the sub bass, which is, for example, D1 with value of 1, and then amp S multiplied by 0.75. Then we have delay of 1, and for else, it's not right, else, we have other sections would be sub bass of E1 notes and value of 4 and amp S multiplied by 0.8 and sleep of 4 we end it and the else and we end the F, then we end the live loop. Okay, so it again syncs with the bar and the section, and this one set the sub loudness per section. The sections are listed as here, and we want, as you see, we want louder subs in drops. So like this is higher, and after that we have this if statement. This is what it conveys is that in energetic parts we should use a more rhythmic sub pattern. Yeah, so we kind of creating a pattern for the sub. So like this one is like E1 for 2 bits. This is the duration of playing the sub at E1. Then the pattern is first 2 bits, then another E1 for 1 bit with a lower amplitude. So then we have the D1, it drops to D1 for movement, and then we have another sleep. So the sleep here is 1, 1, and 2, and the summation of all of that is equal to 4, which is a full 1 bar. And else, oh, I missed this. And else here says that for other parts, it should be just calm and hold the sustained sub. And then we have this calm and sustained, and we end the sub loop. Okay, so after the sub loop, we should have another loop for bass swap. Oh, this is kind of complicated, but let's just dive into it. So we create another live loop and we call it bass swap. We can synchronize it and get the section. And we got the bar I as bar I, and we defined another amplitude modulation, this time for bass, so it's amplitude B. So we define it as we have different cases for sections, different sections, the case sec, and then when it is at drop 1, then the amplitude value would be 1.35, and when it is in drop 2, So it's different in different drops. Then the value is slightly higher, which is 1.45. Then when it's in build-up one, and build-up two, which are similar, and then the value would be a lot lower, like 0.65. Elsewhere, we don't want that, for example, so we make it equal to 0, and we end the modulation of amplitude. And then we have another if statement that if amp B is less or equal than 0, then we have a full bar delay next. And we have another if statement that if section is in build-up one, or the section is in build-up two, then the what would be section yield two define setup nodes like E2, E2, G2, and A2 dot range. A times that do I, and then it's vault base with nodes of I, half, and amplitude modulation of B we define, and the what. We have a delay of half again, and end. After the end, we have 4 times do, then it's what base with B1 value of a quarter and amplitude be multiplied by 0.9 and 1/8. It's the delay of quarter, and then we end this as well. Then we have another 4 times due, which we say that it plays what base with E2 nodes and a quarter value, and the amplitude be multiplied by 1. It's basically the same, and 1/8. Then we have, yeah, sleep of quarter, and we end this as well. Then we have else if here, yeah, we have below 2. You still have drop one and other parts. So if else if it is section drop one Then the pattern on would be E2, E2, G2, E2, D2, E2, E2, A2. This is A2 and G2. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. So let me check that again. So first E2, E2, G2, E2, D2, E2, A2, G2. It would be 8. Yeah, yeah, it's 8. So then we have ring and we have it times do I. So the what would be I even 1 8 and the what base with pattern 1 with any of the i's inside and with half value and the amplitude B and the what. And we have a step of half here in the end too. And we have another 8 times do. Then we say that the what base, yeah. Uh, we don't use the pattern anymore, so it's like E2 and a quarter, E2 quarter, and yeah, the amplitude B multiplied by 0.95 and 1/8. And then we have the sleep of the quarter and then in final we have else for the if, so it would be another pattern which is pattern 2. Then we define pattern 2 as E2, D2, E2, A2, G2, E2, B1, and E2. This would be 8 again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Yeah. And we have 16 times 2 with unknown identifier I. Then we have what? So this I, so it's like in each 4 would be just under 3, 1/8, and a quarter. And the N would be the notes would be the pattern 2, one of the pattern 2 values. Uh, so we can have another note that it's like your jump. Then at the end can be, so the remaining in division to 8 would be 7 and 1/8 and a quarter. And yeah, then we have the watt base. It denotes n and a value of quarter, and the amplitude of amplitude B, and the watt. We have sleep of quarter. Then we end all of the ends. Okay. Um, I have still another one, yeah. So this one was long. So for explaining, yeah. So for explaining, for the bass fault, this is the main mid-bass character part. And they synchronize it with section and bar. Yeah. And we again have an amplitude modulation that has different values. So but here this isn't used, but it's still like it's good to use all the like synchronized things inside all of the loops. And the amplitude B cases says that it sets the bass loudness mapping, and uh, for like build-ups is teaser bass, and for elsewhere is it is actually no bass in intro, breakout, and yeah, breaks and outros and the end tag. And after that, for this if statement, it says that if uh, we are not supposed to play the bass, then the section is this. So it actually, what it does, then it based a full bar. And the next thing is that it skips the rest of the loop for this bar. So the pattern for the bass is that for build 2, it uses a faster bubble that creates more tension. And the NS thing here is that it creates a repeating ring buffer of notes for the build riff. And this is that it has 8 hits multiplied by half bits. So it's actually 4 bits, which is a full bar. And this one here, so it plays watt based at the current note, which is the half bit length, with chosen verb speed. And for this one, it has short stabs, which is 4 multiplied by quarter, which is 1 bit. And we have this one as well. Before this one, so the sleep is the note is B1. So it's like, and if you look at the whole block, it says that it's faster vowel for tension because B1 adds the harmonic lift. And we have the slide sleep. And then for the next 4 times is just another bit of stabs. And for this one, uh, yeah, so it's basically the same, but just like a little different stabs. So then we got the drop one. So if you see this one, it is a repeating call response note pattern. And then we have another 8 times. But before that 8 times, but this exact 8 times, it has 8 hits multiplied by half, so it's 4 bits, and again 1 bar. And this warp here, it alternates warp speed every other hit, so it's kind of a movement talking bass. And the other 8 times is like 8 stutters multiplied by a quarter, so it's actually 2 bits stutter fill. And yeah, then we end this part. And for the drop two, yeah, because only drop two is left, so the pattern for that would be 16 times hits multiplied by um, quarter. So it's 4 bits again and 1 bar, which is more aggressive and has a denser rhythm. And we have the verb here that every fourth hit gets faster vowel, which is an accent. And we have this notes here that selects the notes from pattern 2. And yeah, as I said, it's kind of a yo sound. And then the on the end here on steps 7 and 15, and then continuously, it jumps up to E3 for a yo pitch throw moments. So this means just it's jumping for a higher pitch sound. And then we have other values, as we said. Okay, so the next thing is to define a lead layer. So we have 2 left actually. So it's one lead, and we can have another layer. It's like grid layer. Yeah, so now we're going for the lead layer. So we have another live loop. We call it lead layer. And we synchronize it. We get this section, and we define amplitude modulation, and with case for each section as when it is in intro, then set it to 0. When it is in build.1, then set it to 0.35. And when it is in build.2, then set it at 0.45. When it is in drop1, then set it as 0.55. And when it is in drop2, then set it as 0.65. And lastly, when it is in outro, then set it at 0.3. Elsewhere, set it on 0.2, and we end the modulation here. And then for if amp L, sorry, this was L, not one. Yeah. If amp L is less or equal to 0, yeah, then same as the previous one, we wait for a full bar and we skip that. We end the F here, and then we are going to use an fx. Oh, yeah. So then we are going to use an fx of echo, which is the first time used in this music, and define the phase as 0.375 with decay of 3. And then we have the mix variables here. Again, put the high quality to 1 and change this value to quarter 2. Yeah, and we also use reverb on it. So we're going to define the room. Again, high quality, and the values would be 0.55 to 0.35. And we define the mix as, again, high quality. So if you like have problems or CPU overload, just put all the HQs to 0. So then it would be 1 and setting the values from quarter to 0.18. And we're going to use syn here named blade. So we have another if statement. Yeah. If the section is the build.1 or the section is in build.2. So we have 8 times here. Then for this set we play like scale notes we defined earlier and choose that plus 12 and yeah, um, plus 12 and release of 0.15 with cut off at 110 and amplitude of ample we just defined. Then we have half a sleep and we end the 8 times block and then we end the if statement. But it's not over yet because after this if statement we have other conditions. Yeah. So then it would be actually we shouldn't end the if you want to use if statements. So it would be else if. Yeah. section is in drop 1, then the sequence would be as 0, 3, 5, 0, 3, 5, 7, 5, 3, 0, -2 dot ring. Then we have another 8 times hit block as we play note E4 plus one of the values in the sequence list, and then we have the release of 0.12 and cut off at 115 with the amplitude of amp L. Then we have half sleep again. We end the 8 times block, and then we have another else if. So else if the section is at drop 2, then we have 16 times hit, and then the notes would be from the scale notes, and choose it plus 12, and we play the note with the release of 0.1 and cut off of 120, and with the amplitude of ampel multiply, this is complicated, so the remaining of the division of the I divided by 4 equals to 3, and change the value from this one, 0.9. Then we have a quarter sleep, and we end the 16th block. Then we have the final else here. Then we have a 4th time blocks, 4 times 2. And here we play the scale notes, choose plus 12 gain, and with release of 0.2 and cut off at 105, and the amplitude of amp L. Then we have a full sleep 1. Then we have a lot of ends here. We have 5, 2, 3, 4, 5. So we're going closer to the end. So let's just see this again. So in this one, the amp L, after the synchronization of bars and sections, this amp L is the lead loudness per section, and the different cases are here. So actually we want no lead in intro, and other places just like with different amplitudes. And after that, this, as I said, skip if the lead is off. So then we have the FXs here. So the echo here it actually adds a rhythmic echo with the phase of this value, which is a dotted-ish timing against the 140 BPM that can gives us a bounce. And then we have a reverb that adds space, and it would be lighter if the HQ is 0. And after that, we have the synth. Yeah, so the blade synth is bright and cutting lead. And in this if, in this if, it builds the lead pattern, which is slower. After that, this one, it so the choose thing here, it chooses a random scale note, and also it transposes up one octave. So the 12 is semitones, it's like 12 semitones, and its a short release keeps it plucky. And then for drop one lead is like fixed, and we have a sequence here. Yeah, here. So this sequence is kind of a melodic contour in semitone offsets from E4. And then for the playing notes here is that it uses E4 as base and adds the offset pattern. So it's based on this, but just like gives a modulation on the same note. And then we have finally the drop 2, which is like a little faster compared to drop 1 and accented. And it just like chooses a random note from the scale, and it actually transposes as well an octave up. And this here says that uh, yeah, so here it says that every fourth note is louder, which is the accent pattern. And for the else block here, we just have normal and no modulations like the previous ones. So like then we should have a grid layer, which is the beat crush texture. So it's actually our final uh, live loop and layer for the music. So then we have, yeah, then we create another live loop. We name it as grid layer. Do we synchronize with bar? We get the section from the section, and we say that if the section is at drop 1, or the section is at drop 2, or the section is at build up 2, then we add an fx of bit crusher with beats of oh, with beats of high quality, the values of 6 to 8, and sample rate sample rate of high quality 1, and 10,000 values, 14,000 values, and we set the mix as low, as 0.35. Then we use another FX of high pass filter, so we won't have the interfering lower frequencies. So it would have a cutoff at 90 and 2, and we use synth named pulse, and after that we use another 16th hit block, and we define the notes in scale of E3, E3 with minor, pentatonic, and from that it randomly chooses us 1 in 5 values of over. Then it plays the note. If sustain is sustain of 0, we want that. We don't want that to continue. And release of roughly 0. It's 0.08. And the amplitude of, we define it just in section 2, section build up to the values 0.22 and a little higher, 20. The width of 0.2. Then we have partial sleep. Then we have 3 ends here. Then for the eve, you have bells and a full bar sleep. And also we end that sleep, and we end the live loop, final live loop. So again, the thing is that for the bit crush texture, this thing here, yeah, where was that? Oh, I got off. Yeah. After synchronizing, so this if here is that only active in heavy sections, and the beat crusher itself adds a crunchy digital grid, and the HQ is 1. So if it was non-HQ, it would be slightly cleaner and lighter. So we have low mix to blends in, and then we have the high pass filter that so we have this high pass filter so that the grid doesn't interfere with sub and the bass low end, as I said. And we have the synth here to have a pulse wave for buzzy texture. And then for the 16th hit, it's like 16 steps multiplied by a quarter, so it would be a full bar. And for the scaling, it randomly selects a notes in the same key, and it's just occasion jump up an octave. So like, so if you see that uh, thing, so this thing here it actually says that it has 1 in 5 chance to jump up an octave, like 12 semitones. And then for uh, the playing here, it uses a very short tick, so it would be slightly quieter in build up too. So it rises without overwhelming. Yeah. And the width, as I said, to like 0.2, it narrows the pulse width because the thinner um, the nasal would be more. So then after all this, then we say that if we don't have any active sections, uh, for a full word, don't do anything, but just keep sync timing consistent. So just like for consistently tracking the sync of time. And yep, um, you can play that. I will put the file inside and I put the code. And I hope you enjoyed that all. Okay, so as we finish the code, I run it and I debugged some parts that was just mistakenly written. Like there wasn't any functional issues, there was just some syntax issues. And after that, I also looked at, as I was talking a lot about the CPU overloading, and that may happen to a lot of you if you haven't got like a really good CPU on your laptop or desktop. So I just kind of changed that a little bit to make that a little more suitable for all the devices. So this is just a newer version that have this modification. So basically, what I have done change in this is that, so in this code, it adds a bit more scheduling headroom that helps the when the CPU spikes. And also, uh, the problem was mostly the ultra fast 1/8 node step, and I reduced that in the sections of the music that was really busy, not just all of the music, just those sections that was busy. And um, this code stops the transition loops from waking up every uh, zero point 0.0 second. So that is a lot for CPU wake ups. So basically, these two lines are added, and this gives the program more time to schedule events ahead. So it kind of prevents the getting behind under load error that you would probably get in these similar situations. And straight we go to uh, this line here. Yeah, this one was the live loop for the hats layer. Yeah. And so what has changed is that instead of 32 steps at point 125, which is really dense for CPU, we can use 16 steps at point 25 in busy sections. So as you can see, this is changed to is 16 times, and it's a quarter. So it still feels moving by alternating the amplitude plus the adding occasional extra hat in thread. And after that, for here, so here also the occasional extra tick between steps is changed. So um, this is lighter than running the full 0.125 grid constantly. And after that, here, uh, you have often had at end of every 2 bits, which keeps the energy without huge event count. So yeah, you still have this. And after that, the final touch was that, yeah, so this was the unnecessary wake up that we previously had, and it was around 0.01, which was a lot. So it's now changed that it doesn't like wake up the CPU a lot, as it's already synced with the bars in every live loop, so it's not necessary. And yeah, so make sure to look at the final version of the code. I attached this final code that you can like easily use it, and it's more compatible to all your CPUs. And hope you enjoy it.